I think the only way you're going to be able to
Hey, folks, if I could have your attention, please. It's 7:30, so it's time to start our program for tonight. I know some of you still have food coming. That's great. Hopefully I still have food coming for that matter, although I probably won't be eating it for a little while. My name is Brad Hessel. I'm the treasurer of the Wake County Libertarian Party, as well as a candidate for state senate in District 15 in Wake County, which is the northeastern quadrant of Wake County, which is very heavily populated as Wake County goes. And it does have a little tongue that comes down into the center of the city, just a sliver of inside the old Beltline. So we actually have 7 candidates running, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The program tonight is focused on electoral reform. It's one of 5 that we have prepared on issues that are relevant to this election. And some of them are ones that are being talked about by other candidates, and some of them are ones that are of interest, I guess, primarily to us, because nobody else seems to be talking about them. Electoral reform, I think, is a fairly common issue to everybody. It's certainly one that affects everybody, although I don't think that typically you'll get Republicans and Democrats talking about it the same way that we talk about it. For those of you who were here at our first meetup, which Brian Lewis gave on the environment, this one is going to be a little bit different in the sense that I'd really like to have some discussion as opposed to just me talking. To that end, I'll be asking questions. I'm not going to pick anybody, and make them talk. But if you have questions that aren't my questions or anything that I say that is unclear, don't hesitate to leap in and participate. There are 4 topics that I want to talk about, and open to talking about other ones as well. But the ones that I have in mind are redistricting, the treatment of unaffiliated voters here in North Carolina, ballot access, and the voter ID issue. Those all fall under the broad category of electoral reform. So a little bit of background to start with the redistricting question. We had a speaker by the name of John Davis at our convention a couple of years ago in 2015. And John Davis is very well known among politicians in North Carolina. He does polling and consulting, and he's been around for quite a long time. He's really an expert on North Carolina politics in particular, but also very knowledgeable about national stuff. He's been around for quite a while. And essentially, he predicted Donald Trump. This is in, what, April or May of 2015, I think it was, even before Donald Trump had announced he was running. I mean, he didn't specifically predict Donald Trump per se, but the topic of his speech was strike while the ire is hot. And his thesis was that people are really, really pissed off for a variety of reasons. And so the conditions were conducive to politics being shaken up. And Donald Trump came along and they did exactly that. And speaking to many of the people that John Davis was talking about in his speech. If you have a chance, it is recorded on our, I guess it's on the LPNC's YouTube channel. It's full of insightful stuff about demographics and changes, and it's long. It's about 50 minutes, but it's definitely worth. It's a good 50 minutes to spend. So I recommend that. Anyway, one of the things he talked about was there's a publication by the name of the National Journal, which focuses on national politics, and they do a study of, among many other things, on a social, I think it's economic and foreign policy basis. They measure the relative conservativeness or liberalness of every member of Congress. And they've been doing this for a long time, like 4 decades. And one of the things they measure is how many Republicans are more liberal than the most conservative Democrat, and how many Democrats are more conservative than the most liberal Republican. And when they started doing the study in 1982, there was still a lot of Southern Democrats who were pretty conservative, and typically were more conservative than a lot of New England Republicans, who were typically quite liberal. William Weld, our vice presidential candidate this year, is in the mold of a liberal Republican from Massachusetts. I'm from New England. So when they started, the first year, I think it was 82, or I don't know if that was the first year, but anyway, that's the year that the oldest year that John Davis had stats for. And in that year, out of the 435 members of Congress, there were 300, I'm sorry, I guess it's 535 when you count the senators and the congressional guys together. There were 344 of them who fell into that middle ground, Republicans who were more liberal than the most conservative Democrat or vice versa. 20 years later, in 2002, using that same measure, the number of Congress people in the middle out of 535 had dropped from 344 to 137, which is a huge drop. And then the last year that they've measured this and announced it was 2013. And in 2013, the number of Congress people in the Senate and the House who were either Democrats who were more conservative than the most liberal Republican, or Republicans who are more liberal than the most conservative Democrat. Out of 535 people, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans each in the House, not a single senator fell into the category. So the middle had basically disappeared. And this is, in essence, one of the reasons why we have such apparent log jams and government shutdowns and people that can't compromise, because there's a dynamic here where the elected officials have become more polarized. So why is that happening? Well, one theory that John Davis suggested is because of gerrymandering. And the thing is that we've had gerrymandering for a long time. It's not new. In North Carolina, a good measure of how bad gerrymandering is how many districts only one candidate runs in November, either a Democrat or Republican, because it's pointless and hard to recruit somebody to run against them because they're going to win no matter what. They're going to get 70% of the vote. In 2014, I think there were 32% of the districts that in November, House and Senate, that there was only one candidate running in November. In 2016, that number is 42%, which is even worse. But if you calculate all of the seats since 1992, it's about 50%. So actually, the last 2 cycles have been better than average. So this has been a real problem going back, to the Democrats. But it has gotten worse in the sense that the tools to create these districts have gotten better and better. In North Carolina in 2014, we now have 15 congressional districts, no, 13 congressional districts, plus 2 senators. That's how we get 15 electoral votes. The total number of votes cast for House, for U.S. House now, this is, for Democratic candidates was 44% of the total, and most of the rest were Republicans. There were, a smattering of others, but basically it was 44 to 56. However, our congressional breakdown of the Congress people, it's out of the 12 Congress people, out of the 13 Congress people, there are only 3 Democrats. So that's what, like 20%. So in other words, 44% of the people produce 20% of the results. Clearly, those 44% are not being fairly represented. The split should be, something more like 8 to 4 or 7 to 5 or something like in that realm, if it were fairly reflecting the way people voted. the tools for creating gerrymandering have just gotten so much better in terms of the sophistication of computer modeling and so on and so forth that it's really, you can get incredibly remarkable results. So Common Cause has calculated that of the people that voted in favor of HB2, you know, they had a special legislative session. It cost $60,000 for us to fund these guys to come to Raleigh for a week, especially for the purpose of telling the people of Charlotte where and they could and couldn't go to the bathroom. So if you take all the people that voted in favor of that law, about 90% of them are going to face no opposition in November. Either they literally have nobody running against them, or they're in a district where they're guaranteed to win by 10% or more, no matter what. So there's really no way to hold these people accountable, given the current system that that we have. So gerrymandering, essentially, it's not just that it's unfair, it's also that it creates situations where you do not have a serious debate in terms of the policies. I mean, we get once, you know, every 2 years we get this chance to talk about policies in North Carolina, but when you have 30, 40, or 50% of the seats, there's no opposition, there's not even any debate in those, because there's only one person on the ballot. I mean, what kind of a debate is that? You can't really involve people in the democratic process in a meaningful way, particularly even if they did show up, their votes in effect don't count because the result is preordained. So it's not just that it's unfair, it's also that it's taking away from the capability of the system to enable there to be serious discussion of policy issues. In effect, it's kind of poisonous to democracy. So it's a bad thing. I mean, if anybody wants to raise a counterpoint, I'm open to listening to it. But so the question is, how do we deal with that? And there are states that have implemented solutions that are focused on nonpartisan approaches to redistricting, and that seems to me to be clearly the direction that that North Carolina, you know, should go in if we want to fix this problem. What they basically do, it does say, and by the way, in our Constitution, that you're not supposed to split counties up when it comes time to creating districts. But that rule has been ignored for a while, kind of ironically, because at some point in time, some court said that the Voting Rights Act basically countermanded or made that irrelevant and took precedence, I guess, over it. And then there was another ruling at some point, and I'm not an expert on this, but I know that at some point folks said, some court also said that, well, you can pay attention to the boundaries, but you know, we have not done a great job of that. It's a little bit better for the state lines than it is for the national congressional lines. But of course, the congressional lines, I don't know how many of you saw the map that was posted on Facebook, and I don't remember if we got it up on Meetup.com or not, that showed the districts that the North Carolina State Assembly had put in place for us for Congress. Did everybody see that map? I mean, that was the one that was ruled illegal, and actually it's not the one we're using now. Brian pointed out to me that the one that we're actually using now is somewhat improved, although it appears that that one may also be, at least a couple of districts in there may be ruled unconstitutional on the basis of discrimination. Essentially, the way that redistricting works now is that it's up to the General Assembly. And of course, in 2010, the Republicans won control. And so they were able to do basically whatever they wanted. Brian?
The way it works in reality is Democrats and Republicans, whichever party controls, are depending on the Republicans. They're just refining what the Democrats have been using in North Carolina for centuries.
Ever.
The Republican leadership should be Hilberger and what's the name?
Tom Tillis?
No. They heard that. The Republicans to do the maps, draw the maps out. And then they presented the maps to the committee is controlled by Republicans. So basically, as the court has discovered in their overturning the district, that basically 3 people in North Carolina decided to collapse on it, and then the assembly
Rubber stamp them.
ratified it because it has to do with public things. So that's the way it works in reality. I mean, they had public hearings, you know, they had different versions of the maps, the Democrats put maps out and all that stuff was going on, but that's all.
All for show.
It's all smoke and mirrors, while in the meantime, the deal is done. And that's the way it's always been. I mean, that's the plan that I think Brad has alluded to is a bill that was introduced to the House. It was sponsored, it was a quote-unquote bipartisan bill that had 60 sponsors. In the House, 60 is the majority. So the majority of the House, North Carolina House, sponsored this bill was based on a model used by the state of Iowa, which basically turns the redistricting process over to a agency, department of the legislature, to draw the maps up, and they draw the maps up based on computer data, not considering race, local affiliation, or incumbency. You can't draw a district to protect the incumbent. Basically, one person, one vote, to try to keep them geographically compatible. But this bureaucratic group draws the maps up, they present the plan to the General Assembly. The General Assembly gets an up or down vote, just like they do with the base realignment. They try to close military bases. They give an up or down vote. If they reject the plan, this agency will go back and come up with another plan. They submit it to the General Assembly. The General Assembly rejects that plan. They try it one more time. And if the third plan that this nonpartisan group comes up with is rejected, then the General Assembly gets to do it themselves. Which I think by that time the public outcry will be such that won't happen. But basically, it's an independent. I say independent, nonpartisan, but as one of the proponents of this bill said, there's no such thing as nonpartisan. You know, everything that General Assembly does is political partisan, which is okay. Let's buy that. It should be multi-partisan and bipartisan. But the agency of, I can't remember the name of it, it's an agency that currently exists in the legislature that's basically draft bill. That's what it would do. That's kind of that's what Iowa's been used to for a long time. Now, granted, Iowa is, you know, they don't have as many districts, it's not populated, it's primarily a rural state, it's a model. But the key to the whole thing is that we had 60 people in the House sponsor this bill. It never got a hearing. It was filed into the bin, then it was all like.
None of the co-sponsors were among the House leadership, though.
Well, except Paul Stam.
Oh, true, Paul Stam, right?
Who was retiring. So there were people, but it wasn't one of the big 3.
Right.
It was the big 2.
Bobby?
I'm willing to concede that the Republicans are probably bending the results and forming districts to help themselves. And I think something should be done about it, but we need to have a sense of proportion about this. For 100 years, the Democrats have drawn districts to help Democrats. So we need to pass a law that says after 94 more years, that we will then put in a nonpartisan commission to draw them. The Democrats had their way for 100 years, then the Republicans should have their chance for 100 years, and then after that, we should do something fair.
Yeah, I'm thinking if it's wrong, it probably should be fixed sooner than 94 years. But
Well, it was wrong for, they have done it one way for 100 years. Give the other side an equal chance.
are you saying there's a difference between Democrats and
had to be
Republicans?
abused twice.
Yes, there's some difference between Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, right, there are only 2 sides.
There are plenty of other sides.
Well,
And if you think that we're going to get an honest representation on this committee that is appointed by the legislature, and they're going to represent libertarians honestly, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn, I'm going to say
I never
it.
said anything like that, but I thought you were being completely facetious with your 94-year-old.
It was a joke.
So
Yeah.
I think there is a completely work around the legislature that the public may realizing it. They're refusing to register as affiliated with anything.
Oh, I'm so happy you said that, Joy. That leads perfectly into the next topic.
I'm just saying, if the legislator won't do what you want to do,
But
The irony of the situation is that for years, the Democrats controlled the process and gerrymandering the districts in their favor. I wouldn't say totally that way, because gerrymandering is a bipartisan effort. They make sure that they have certain districts reserved for the other parties. So the Democrats did this for 100 years. And as John Evans pointed out, the Democrats in North Carolina have changed dramatically. One comment I remember from the speech was that this ain't Jesse Helms in North Carolina. Jesse Helms couldn't do what he did in North Carolina. You got too many people, and we're not talking about just Yankees. We're talking people outside of the South and outside of the East Coast. So the Democrats did this, and then guess what? The Republicans eventually got control of the General Assembly and didn't learn the damn thing. They turned around and started doing exactly what the Democrats did. 2020 comes around, the Democrats in North Carolina will be different. And guess what? You know, it may switch back and forth. So at some point, they may get the idea they have to do something out of it.
So
And,
Are the courts not currently providing the check that you're talking about to an extent?
the courts are helping, but I mean, clearly, if you have a choice between having terrible, illegal, unconstitutional passed and then having to spend time in court and having to spend money litigating and then having uncertainty about elections and all the bad things that go along with all those processes, it would be better if you could get the districts right, or at least better in the first place. So yeah, the courts are better than nothing, but I wouldn't want to depend on that as the solution going forward personally.
It'll never cease to amaze me when our state is going to spend money litigating. HB2, Amendment 1, they'll throw as much
Our
money
tax
as
dollars
they
at
can.
work. However, to Joy's point, one of the things that as libertarians we pay a lot of attention to at the at the state level is the growth of the registration numbers. And an interesting thing, since 2012, to Joy's point, the Democrats and Republicans have actually a growth of 0%. It's slightly up for the Republicans, slightly down for the Democrats between the end of 2012 and now, even though the population has been increasing about 1% a year. Libertarians have been growing 12% a year, which is gigantic compared to 1% a year. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are coming our way, but in terms of sheer numbers, where the real growth is occurring is among the unaffiliateds. Unaffiliateds have grown since the end of 2012 approximately 4% a year, which is 4 times the rate of growth of the overall population. So clearly, a lot of new people that are registering are going unaffiliated, and a lot of people that were Democrats or Republicans are changing to unaffiliated to create that situation. I mean, there are lots of people registering as Democrats or Republicans, but there are people leaving also, and it's just about balanced out for them. So when I moved here in 1992, imagine I moved here in 1992, unaffiliateds there were no libertarians. You couldn't be a libertarian in North Carolina. It wasn't something that the Board of Elections recognized, but you could be unaffiliated. Unaffiliated, there were 100 counties in North Carolina, and in every single county in 1992, unaffiliateds were the 3rd largest group after Republicans and Democrats. Now, sometimes some counties Democrats were more, and in some counties Republicans were more, but unaffiliateds were always an afterthought. I mentioned that speech that John Davis gave. One of the things he was talking about was the growth of unaffiliateds also. And he pointed out that in, I guess it was May of 2015, there were now 4 counties in North Carolina, or there were many counties in North Carolina where unaffiliateds had climbed to number 2, and there were 4 counties in North Carolina where unaffiliateds were number 1. They were more unaffiliated than either Democrats or Republicans in 4 counties in North Carolina when he gave that speech. I don't remember specifically what they were. They were small counties. I think Camden was one.
Wake was one.
Wake is one of the counties where there's #2, but we unaffiliated are not #1 in Wake. Democrats are #1 in Wake. I'm talking about counties where the unaffiliated were the top group of all three. Now, the latest stats are through the 13th of August, which is just a few days ago. There are now 7 counties in North Carolina where unaffiliateds, there are more unaffiliateds than either Republicans or Democrats. So the top group, including, I said most of the counties were small counties. One of the counties now is New Hanover. New Hanover is the 8th largest county in population in North Carolina. There are more unaffiliateds in New Hanover than there are Democrats or Republicans. So the growth, this growth is definitely showing up. There are 1.9, I think, plus million unaffiliated, about 2.6 million Democrats and 2.0 or 2.1 million Republicans. At the rate things are going, by about mid-2017, about a year from now, there will probably be more unaffiliated than there are Republicans registered in the state of North Carolina. So it's definitely happening. Now, oh, and to answer your question, there are now 51 counties in North Carolina where there are more unaffiliated than either Democrats or Republicans. They're #2, in other words, in those 51 counties. So 51 plus 8 out of, there's 59 counties where they're either #1 or #2. But Wake is one of the ones. Wake, Orange, Durham, and Mecklenburg are all counties where there are more unaffiliated than there are whatever #2 is. I think it's Republicans in each case in those 4 counties.
Brad, question for you.
Brian.
Are there any legitimately recognized applications of bias in how districting is done? Like to the regulations of us?
Well, according to the courts, yes. The courts have recognized at least a couple of congressional districts, U.S. congressional districts, as problematic, and just the recent court announced a decision.
That's problematic.
There's no court decision about it. When generally the courts have upheld the right of the legislature to redistrict. That's the way it's done.
Right.
So they're accepting that there is an injection of bias in that process.
Right. Exactly.
Well, and in invalidating the districts, implicit in that invalidation is there must be some issue.
There aren't that many states that use a process other than having the General Assembly.
Well, I think technically in Iowa, if I'm not mistaken, the legislature gets to approve the result.
Really is the Iowa one.
Right.
Right. There's a handful of other states where they have either an agency like that or they have a commission. They call it a bipartisan commission, but it's a commission that's been, of course, controlled by the 2 establishment parties.
Right.
But that does it. But most states, it's the legislature. It's considered to be a legislative prerogative. It's always been that. Right. Which is why we've always had government.
So talking about unaffiliated, this actually, there's 2 topics that kind of meld into each other. One is the way unaffiliated are treated, and the other is ballot access. So I may kind of combine those. How many around this table are registered as unaffiliated? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
And what?
So overall in North Carolina. Overall in North Carolina, you guys are 30%, 3 out of 10, 29 point something percent of people are registered as unaffiliated among the 6.6 million who are registered to vote. Now, in North Carolina, there are boards of election. There's a board of election for the state, which has 5 people on it, and then there are 100 counties, and each county has a board of election that consists of 3 people. So keeping in mind that 30% of the population are registered unaffiliated, and I'd like the unaffiliated people to answer this question, if, or to answer what you may not know the answer, but you can suggest an answer. What would be a reasonable number of people to serve on the Board of Elections in each county, given the fact that about 30% of the population is unaffiliated voters? Now, just to, before you answer that question, what does the Board of Elections do? Basically, they decide things like where the precinct voting is going to take place. Is it going to be the school? Is it going to be a church? Which one is it going to be? What are the hours of operation? If there's early voting, they decide those sites. They also make decisions on registration issues. If there's a registration issue that the bureaucrats can't figure out, or there's some dispute about it, it'll go up to the Board of Elections. Question.
They can, if somebody challenges somebody's voter registration, the Board of Elections.
That makes the decision. Yeah, so they're pretty important. They really do affect your life. Right. So now who was unaffiliated? You, Michelle, is it? No, you're a libertarian. Yo, Jared. Okay, let's ask Jared. Jared may know the answer, so because I think he's heard me talk about this before. How many people on the Board of Elections are unaffiliated?
Probably 0.
0 is the correct answer. There are 305 people on the boards of election in North Carolina, and 0%, 0 of them are unaffiliated. And the reason for this is because there's a state law that says whoever is governor gets to name 2 of the people, or not he himself, but his party gets to name 2 of the people, and the other party, whatever party it is not in charge of the governor, gets to the next largest party that's not in charge of the governor, the next larger party that's not of the governor gets to name the 3rd person on the board. And I'm not quite sure how it breaks down with the state. It's probably 3 and 2. And so as a practical matter, it is the parties that actually name who's on the boards.
But at the county level, at the state level, it's the part of the language of the legislation is the 2 parties of the 2
The largest parties, the 2 larger parties.
Get to nominate people from the state board. At the county level, it says the chair of each state recognized party. So at the county level, if we have a libertarian chair in the county, he or she can nominate people beyond the board of elections. So who go ahead and make these nominations? To the county board of elections.
But who actually decides who's on the board in each county?
The governor.
Okay. So the governor gets to choose from among these people. Right, yeah.
We tried, there was an effort, avoiding this was, in 2012, to get some counties to nominate people for, I don't think we were with us yet, to get us to nominate, at least nominate people, go through the, you know, the process. Because the problem is we don't have a county where we have a chair. And second of all, we just didn't have the number of people that were willing to have their name.
Yeah, I often wondered, there was a guy that stood up to be in Orange County, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, well, Jason,
How did he
O'Hara
do?
came up with the idea, and I think they actually may have submitted the name, I'm not sure. So I'm thinking.
You can put another table at the end.
That's something to do. We need to plan, if the governorship changes.
Right. Or even if not.
No.
Well, there'll still be some turnover and the opportunity to name people to the. There's no reason not to. I mean, we don't lose anything.
Yeah, actually, I think
It'll be easy when Lon wins.
Yeah, when Lon wins, it'll be no problem, right? Okay, so clearly this is a circumstance where unaffiliateds are not treated well. Now, I have to say, in all fairness, one thing that's good about the way North Carolina treats unaffiliateds is because of the way the primary system works. From a practical standpoint, as an unaffiliated voter, you have a great opportunity when the primary season rolls around. You can pick any primary that you wish to participate in, presuming that the party opens it up. The party actually has the choice of having an open or closed primary. But as a practical matter, for PR reasons and other reasons, no party has closed their primary, and I don't know when the last time a closed primary, if ever, has occurred in North Carolina. Certainly not.
I remember, I mean, I would have been knocked out as 90. I would have been paying attention since 90. But I think they used to, I think the Republicans have.
I believe that was before the law was changed, though. That didn't used to be the case that unaffiliated could vote in a party primary. I'm not sure when that changed.
I know the Democrats was the first to open it up, and the Republicans have followed suit.
Right. Yeah, so there may have been a time when they could have done it, but they didn't.
And there was an effort aborted, I think, in the Republican Party this year.
In any event, there are many states where if you're unaffiliated, you do not have that option. So that is a positive thing about North Carolina and something that I like. And I was unaffiliated for quite a while here. After getting disgusted with the Republicans, I'd gotten disgusted with the Democrats and switched to Republican before I even moved here. So I've tried them all. However, representation on the boards of election, or not being represented on the boards of election, I think is a pretty important way that unaffiliateds are not treated well in North Carolina. And now I'm going to kind of segue into a ballot access topic, because I'm also going to talk about running for office. Now, in December, I made the decision, kind of a last-minute decision, to run for state senate. I thought I had recruited somebody else to run for this seat, and it didn't work out for that person. And I'd spent a lot of time recruiting kids for Wake County and explaining why it was important for them to run, because you got to, represent the team, and it's important to show the flag. And I know it's a sacrifice, but this is something that we really need to do in Wake County, and make an example. And after I'd given that speech about 20 times to different candidates, then it turned out that there was an opening in my district. It was kind of hard for me to say, well, I'm not going to do it myself. So anyway, in order to do that, what I needed to do was go down to the Wake County Board of Elections with a check for $207 and a form, and file it, and bingo, I'm on the ballot as a libertarian for the 15th district. And if somebody else had wanted to run as libertarian, I would have had a primary in March, but no one else did. So I'm automatically on the ballot in November. I've known that since last December, when the filing period ended.
Somebody else was also registered libertarian, filed in the district, and paid the $207.
But they didn't, is what it said.
Right.
Well, I'm saying, you could have fixed the problem.
That's what I just said. Yes, I'm sorry I didn't explain it well. Yeah, that could have happened. But the point is that all I needed to do was fill out the form and pay the $207. Now, if I had been an unaffiliated voter, I could not have done that. And the reason is because they won't accept your $207 check until you have filed a petition with, I believe it is 4% of the number of voters, registered voters in your district, which in my district with 140-some thousand voters would amount to petitions of 5,500-ish voters, which of course means that I'd have to get like twice that many to be sure I had the right number. And then after I'd done that, and they'd gone through the process of certifying that all my petitions were correct, I mean, all my signatures, I had enough signatures, then they would take my $207 and put me on the ballot. So, I mean, it takes a lot more than $207 to gather 10,000 signatures in a district. I mean, that's a lot of work. Either you've got to have a lot of dedicated volunteers, or you've got to be able to have money to be able to afford to hire people to go out and collect signatures. There are professionals who do that.
This is not just unaffiliated, though. If you're a Green Party member, you couldn't run as a Green Party member.
How did the libertarians get on?
Actually, I'd like to ask Brian to talk about that subject a little bit, because of course we went through as a party the same basic process. The same rule applied to us before we originally got on the ballot.
Yeah, I want to say that the whole thing with gerrymandering is also tied to the fact that North Carolina still has, I don't know, maybe number 2 now, as far as being the most restricted ballot access for the United States. Most people don't really, this is really not a sexy issue, because we're talking about ballot access. If you want, if you're a libertarian, if you're a member of the Constitution Party or Green Party or any other party except Democrat or Republican, if you want to run for office and represent that party, you can't do that in North Carolina unless your party is recognized by the state. That requires the party to collect currently 89,366 signatures. And that number will probably go up this year after the gubernatorials.
Oh, and by the way, as an aside, don't let me make you lose your train of thought, but that 89,000 figure also applies if you're an unaffiliated voter who wants to run for governor.
If you you want to run as an independent. I mean, most states don't affiliated, this is no Kakalaki term. Most white states, they call it independent. So if you don't want to buy into the party system, you want to just run for office, you want to run for governor, you got to collect 89,366 signatures to have your name printed on the ballot.
Which of course really means 160,000.
But yeah, you got to run about 30%, get about 70% tax. And there's a period of time you can do that. I think June 1st or June 10th was the cutoff. So, and if you're a Green Party, and this is the Green Party faces this issue for years, they have people that are active locally, and you want to run for county commissioner or general assembly, you want to run against one of these unchallengeable candidates, you want to run a libertarian green, you can't do that because. Well, you could do that if the Green Party were recognized by the state. So if somebody wants to run the General Assembly in House District 36, the party would have to collect 89,066 to get on the ballot so you can file as green or whatever. And that's the real, and all this other discussion about how unfairly people are treated is really boils down to the fact that the Democrats and Republicans not want competition, so they have this high threshold. Their Libertarian Party has been, I've only got involved since the 90s. Bobby's been around longer, but we petitioned to get on the ballot 8 times successfully. Each time the number goes up. Each time it costs money. I think the last ballot petition drive we did in 2008, get on the ballot 2008, was $150,000 or something like that. As Mike Munger pointed out, it's like asking somebody to run a marathon before they do the 100. It's like asking Usain Bolt to run a marathon before he runs a 100-meter race. By the time we got on the ballot, collecting that number of signatures, spending that much money, we're totally exhausted and we barely.
Why do you have to do it multiple times? What determines that you have to?
Because we couldn't get the 2% that we needed.
There's 2 ways to say recognize the party. First of all, you have to petition to get on the ballot. 89,366 plus. It's based on 2% vote for the governor. So in 2016, that number will probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was over 100,000. So once you do that, you run your candidate for governor. It used to be you had to get 10% of the vote, and that never happened. Okay, so what happened is you run your candidate for governor, they get 2 to 3%. You're off the
Back to square one.
One election. At the time we did that, I guess the first 7 times we did that, we could also nominate candidates. So if we got on ballot, we could just nominate a whole slate of candidates. We did that one year. We nominated actually the majority of seats in the General Assembly. We just put names on the ballot. So we had candidates. So now that figure has been lowered to 2%. So in 2008, for the first time in modern North Carolina history, another party besides the Democrats and Republicans managed to maintain ballot access by getting 2% of the vote. And we repeated the deal as well.
That would be Mike Munger in 2008 for governor and Barbara Howe in 2012 for governor.
Mike got close to 3% and Barbara got over 2%. Now, curiously, in 2008, we had other candidates on the statewide ballot. We had a candidate for the United States Senate. We had a candidate for Commissioner of Insurance. Both of those candidates, and we had a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. All of those candidates, I think it's 12, got more votes than our candidate for governor. We got over 2%. Well over 2%. In fact, I think the Gaines ran Commissioner of Insurance, we got 153,000 votes. So that didn't count. It didn't count for squad.
May I ask you,
Wouldn't stay off.
if we don't get 2%,
We're off the ballot.
even if one of our candidates, even when I win,
President and governor. President and governor.
Listen, where we have, we have somebody elected to the General Assembly or the county commission as a libertarian, if a gubernatorial candidate or candidate currently, but in our 7% of votes of either of those candidates. In our history, our presidential candidate is not even come close to that 10%. So it's the governorship, that's the race. But only if you get elected in 2012, Ron Cecil
I will get elected.
vote. When Owen gets elected, and he's in the General Assembly, he'll be a libertarian, but the state won't recognize him as one party. He'll be
Okay, well, I would like to point out that I agree with Brian's point that most people in North Carolina actually don't care about this. However, I do think that if we pitch this as a...
It's not sexy if they care about it, because when you add the unaffiliated, when you say you want to be independent,
Right.
but you can't do that without.
Well, that's the angle that I think makes the most sense for us to focus on, is that it's unfair to unaffiliated voters. The unaffiliated voters, people who are registered as unaffiliated, are being cheated basically out of
equal
treatment. And to me, that's the angle to attack this whole issue.
There are, I think, 2, maybe 3. I'm surprised Ray hasn't. Surprised Ray's not here, but I think he's been tracking people who have actually jumped through the unaffiliated petitioning drive. Some of these ones.
I think it's write-ins at this point.
2 or 3 that have actually qualified as unaffiliated voters.
Write-ins, aren't they? I think they're right.
Their money is unaffiliated.
Okay.
On the
But
ballot.
their names will be on the ballot without the party.
Okay. Not as write-ins. Okay.
For lower offices.
No, Ray's research.
Tracks these numbers. I think there were 2, maybe 3
But
people
how much,
running for the General Assembly who were qualified to have their name listed on the ballot as an.
so we have some history. How much lower than 2% would you reasonably want it to be then? I mean, why isn't 2% a very reasonable number? I'm gonna play devil's advocate. 2%. If your message can't hit 2% of the people, and if you can't get 2% of the funding to accomplish your goal, I kind of wonder why.
I'll be honest with you, David. From my perspective, if I'm attacking it from the point of view of the unaffiliateds, the question of ballot access for the parties is not as big an issue for me. The unaffiliated, I mean, a lot of people are unaffiliated because they've grown frustrated with one of the parties. So you have some choices. I mean, you can put your energy into one of the parties, now 3 parties, and you can devote your time, your resources. A lot of people get frustrated with a party, and what they do is what you described, which is they walk away from it. So if you walk away from the process that exists, and then choose to be unaffiliated, and then choose to say you should deserve something when you're not organized, when you're not a functional party, that's a choice. You kind of have to live with that to an extent in the current system.
I want to address this 2% thing, because it doesn't sound like a big barrier. How many registered libertarians are there in North Carolina? Less than 30,000 at this point, right? So, and what percentage of the electorate is that?
0.4.
Thank you. So getting 2% is a significant thing. And when your party just gets on the ballot, how many registered people does it have? None. So if you had been around in the last 16 years or so and seen like every election cycle, when the 10,000 or 12,000 people that you painstakingly built up over 4 years in your party and suddenly disaffiliated, they get a card saying they're affiliated. It is hard to get that message out, and it's. I mean, you have to talk to. You can't even count on the people in your own party because they're not part of the party. At least it's not a big thing. I don't know how to explain it. 2% is a significant barrier to agreeing, first of all, to get on the ballot, and this is before you have to worry about the 2%. You can get 100,000 signatures. And if you don't
And
think
I understand the
is,
requirements, I understand it's challenging, but again, if the message is important enough, the funding will come, the people will come. The unaffiliated, a lot of them are pretty distanced. I know it's not a popular, I can already see with the hands, not a popular position, but money counts and
I have a lot
organization
of
counts.
sympathy for your position, except I don't think you understand just how unfair the system is. If every year, if every election cycle, the Dems, Republicans, and Libertarians and the Greens had to go out and get 100,000 signatures, well, I might think that's a little more fair. But I just,
That's the bigger issue is.
To answer your question, it's very simple. In South Carolina, they have a system. I haven't noticed South Carolina falling into a pit or anything. I think we should follow South Carolina system.
What's their system?
Their system is, each year, the party has to send a letter to the State Board of Elections saying that they wish to remain on the ballot.
How do they qualify?
How do they get
They still have to get on the ballot.
How do they get on the ballot in the first place?
It takes 5,000
Which
signatures,
is a minor.
That's
$100.
which is trivial.
That seems like nothing.
You can do that. Food line, they have you
And
recognize
South
the
Carolina
chair.
seems to be getting along just fine every time I drive through.
Well, in any event, from a tactical point of view, David, I agree implicitly with your implicit point that you know, the 2% thing is kind of a harder sell than if I'm an individual, it does seem pretty easy to see that, you know, if I do it this way, all I have to do is pay $207, and if I do it this way, I've got to pay thousands of dollars to get a petition, and then I pay my $207. That's a clear. Maybe there's some penalty for being unaffiliated, but it seems disproportionate to me that it's that huge a difference. If I want to run for office, if I'm a responsible citizen.
We have a long list of unaffiliated who have tried to get on the ballot for the last 5 years.
Who would be that?
All I'm saying is that there is a lot of people in that category, and you know, the question, it isn't necessarily that they would actually do it, but that they are not in effect allowed to do it. They don't have the ability to do that, whereas other people do. It seems on the face of it unfair.
Let me make a point. From the party point of view, it is a fact that under current rules, there is not one party at all, anywhere in North Carolina, by any name, any ideology, that has gotten on the ballot other than being a heritage. The Democrats and Republicans didn't get on the ballot, they were on the ballot. Under this rule, without money from the outside, lots of it. So Perot could do it with his own big pile of money. But if you want to be on the ballot in this state, it means a national organization has to dump money on this state. The Greens never got that. Now, when Nader was running, the energy was there. I don't agree with Nader, but the Greens had plenty of energy. They would have gotten more than 2% of the vote if they had been on the ballot, in all likelihood, for him then. But they could not put him on the ballot because of these rules. And he did not have that kind of money to go to every single state like Perot did and buy his way on. That's literally what it is. It's buying a way on.
That's a presidential versus a state. So the other point is a lot of the successful campaigns, whether you go back to Howard Dean or Obama, have done fairly well with low-level, internet and social media, and just pulling in $20 here, $25 here. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not unachievable. And I just
in North Carolina, this particular goal we're talking about is unachievable,
or has been,
unless outside money comes in. Period. If it was so easy, the Greens could have done it long ago. Just whatever. But nobody came in and gave them money. Little tiny parties that were even smaller than the Greens get on if somebody from the outside just throws money down. Constitution Party's never been on the ballot under these rules. But they could.
You're not going to pull the money.
Yeah, they could. They've got enough presence that they could.
I think the point is that there's some rationale for having some kind of standard for party.
I would agree it could probably be lower. I agree it could be lower.
But in another bill that sat in the session was a bill to lower the initial petition requirements to 1/2 of 1%, which would put the number down around the 10,000, which is the average of most states. Now, in South Carolina, there are a few states where you can say you want to be a party, there's anything for a party. But in the majority of states, you have to have some support by collecting some number of signatures, and it's generally between 5,000 and 10,000 signatures for a party to be recognized. The bill, it sat in the committee, and was done that.
I would be fine lowering it. I don't think it's going to lead to a wave of unaffiliated all over our ballot next election cycle.
That's our point too.
Point
They say, the legislator says, oh, it'll be like Italy, 100 names on one ballot or something like
The
that.
point is that the rule.
It's not true.
The Democratic, the establishment parties in North Carolina have written these rules to exclude anybody else. The Greens the Democrats are afraid of the Greens, the Libertarians are afraid of us. And the reason North Carolina's ballot access vote also restricted, is that at one point in history, believe it or not, in North Carolina, the Socialist Party was actually on the ballot. The Socialist, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and that scaled from Jesus. So they upped it up. It used to be relatively easy. Yeah, you had the two establishment parties. Well, actually, you had the Democrats, and if you were part of the Democratic primary, you didn't get to vote.
That candidate was Chapel Hill.
Those 30% unaffiliated people, if
We're
we
talking about the
change
80s, so it's way.
the party formation rules in North Carolina, and I think parties, there's a big, there's, a lot of people don't like the party system. I think it's great. I think that the problem is not the party system itself, it's that the state runs primary, but that's another lecture. But if we didn't have, if we had low barriers to party formation and continuance, there would be like 4 or 5 or 6 really fascinating different party systems drawing from those 30% people. There would be Constitution Party Greens, Ultra Greens, I don't know.
It'd probably be like South Carolina, and what is it, 5?
Yeah, and that, to me, that would be, it would give those 30%, many of them would still choose to be unaffiliated, but many of them would have a more, sort of rational, political home. But I will say just one other thing, I know I don't need to be like, make this personal, but if, when you're standing at a fair booth and you have to concentrate all your political energy for an entire like outreach season, asking people to sign a petition, and they say to you, well, I want to hear you talk about issues. Why are you always, you libertarians are always asking us to sign these petitions? And that was very frustrating. You know, it's like, we like that more than to talk about issues, but we just need to be able to get our candidates on the ballot so that we can do that. So, if you had a 5,000 to 10,000 signature barrier every year and every party had it, I should just talk about legislation.
So question, if anyone here knows, I would love the answer. In North Carolina and in federal, and I know in federal it's a little fuzzy. If there were a 45, 46, 9% split, libertarians over 9%, would the libertarians be able to throw their weight to provide a majority? And therefore create a majority government?
Not create a coalition. Coalition, that's a coalition
Correct.
switch vote, yeah.
Correct. Would that be recognized, or would it be purely the party affiliation?
I'm not sure what you mean. Where are these numbers coming from?
Well, I'm just saying, if the numerical split were in absence of coalescing with another party, another party.
Are you talking about an election or the voter rolls?
The legislature itself.
Well, they would vote for the majority leader, and the Democrat, the Libertarians could vote for either the Democratic
To create a majority.
or the Republican majority leader, and therefore voting them the majority party.
Right, right.
If we had a.
It'd be a coalition.
In North Carolina,
Essentially.
I guess late 90s, maybe. Republicans,
The Libertarians would not be able to
the House
release the coalition.
was almost evenly split,
Could leave it though.
and some
Threaten to
Republicans
leave it.
had to deal with it.
Once the majority guy's named,
We had a period of history where
you
we
can't
had-
unseat
we had
him.
two chairs, we had-
Well, maybe you
the other
can.
side of the Republican alternating sitting in the speaker's position. And we had a bill that was over through the General Assembly to change the lower the ballot, lower the ballot access restrictions, and, you know, one day there'd be a Democrat presiding, next day there'd be a Republican presiding, and guess what? That bill kept coming to the top of the calendar and being overlooked.
Yeah, well, my point being.
Possibility that if we had, if Olin gets elected.
There you go with if again.
When Olin gets elected, and he's the only libertarian in the House, and for some reason they're evenly split, yeah, he could give one of the two parties a majority.
He's the deciding
Right. And
That's actually mathematically impossible because there's an even number of seats in the House. So.
But if we had 2 or 3 elected in the
So when there are three of us in general side,
Yeah.
and
Okay, well, we're getting a little bit far afield now. I think it's time for me to close this discussion, and I would just, with respect to David's point, suggest that potentially the value that I see here is as an issue in terms of appealing to unaffiliated. And I don't think the fact that in reality, not many of them are actually going to run is a big deal in terms of pointing out to them they're being treated
I mean,
unfairly.
I agree, and that's why I can talk about, I'm knocking primarily on unaffiliated groups, but I also know
Right.
about half the time I run into these unaffiliated, it's, Trump Clinton, I'm probably not gonna bother this time. So, I mean,
Right.
there is.
Absolutely.
And this is what I always do in these, and I devil's advocate, I just run into too many unaffiliated who just simply don't care.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, that's where I sometimes.
And conversely, you'll find some Democrats and Republicans who agree that it's unfair and would support.
30% is a lot of people. They really felt like they were an aggrieved minority, like really suffering collectively.
Well, I
They
think,
would probably be more
to
active.
say that they're an aggrieved minority, when you talk about unaffiliated, you don't know where those people
Yeah,
are.
I don't think
They're
there's any
not-
consciousness of them
No.
as a group. But what I'm suggesting is that nevertheless, we could appeal to their situation and possibly raise their consciousness a bit. That's all. That's what I'm suggesting.
It's probably
Okay.
the same distribution as the
Several
typical.
times I had a presentation today, which I did presentation on about unaffiliated. Everybody go. There'll be a story tomorrow that tells how unaffiliated and decided elected.
All right, well, I'm going to close this particular part of the program now. I want to thank everyone for coming and remind you that there are 3 more sessions on the schedule. If you go to either the WakeLP Facebook page, our Meetup.com page, or the LPNC's event page on their webpage, those are listed. I think the next one is the 15th of September, Olin. I believe you're going to be talking about education.
That's right.
Right, so it's about 3 or 4 weeks out. So keep that in mind.
I hope to have some people from different sides of that with me to try to address different questions and try to have a real good diversity of responses about education, voucher programs, what we like to call the backpack budgeting.
And again, very much thank you all. And